This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer?
Experts in the Wire, episode 28. Dave Gerhardt. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 28 of Experts on the Wire. My guest today, Dave Gerhardt, has worked with many companies you've probably heard of, like Constant Contact and HubSpot, and he now runs marketing for Drift. And Dave's going to come on the show today and talk about how he recently led 138x growth in blog traffic for Drift. He's going to tell us how they achieved that growth, and to put those numbers a little more tangibly, they went from 198 visits in the month of October up to 27,369 visits, to be exact, in the last month of traffic. He's going to tell us why he ignores analytics, how they leverage cold email outreach, and actually did not even have a plan for their growth, yet still achieved growth like that. We also chat about other things like leveraging community sites like inbound.org and growth hackers by self-submitting without seeming self-promotional, why many startups suck at PR, why Drift ditched all of their gated content, and how their podcast gets over 10,000 downloads a month. I'm very jealous. Also discussed here things like side projects, books, bad podcast hosts, hopefully not me, and sneezers. You'll have to tune in to hear what that's all about. So I hope you enjoy episode 28 with Dave Gerhardt of Experts on the Wire. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on Experts on the Wire. I'm very excited to have Dave Gerhardt on the line. Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We just discovered you used to intern right upstairs from where I am.
Yeah, I already feel like I'm ready to do this because we got the Worcester connection down, and so it can only go up from here, I think. So We're in a good spot.
That's true. That's awesome. And you're right over in Boston, right?
Yeah, we're in Boston.
Awesome. So I've got a lot of questions to ask you, but give me a quick background on yourself and also then set up what you do at Drift and what Drift is.
Yeah, so background on myself, let's see, I've worked at a bunch of different software companies here in the Boston area. I worked at Constant Contact and HubSpot. Now I'm at Drift. Drift was started by two former HubSpot execs, two product guys, David Cancel and Elias Torres. And I run marketing at Drift. We're a messaging app for sales and marketing teams to help them grow their businesses by talking to their customers.
Awesome. So is it totally out of line for me to say this is the Snapchat for businesses?
Yeah, probably for now. We don't have any of that, but really what we're building our product around is, if you look at the way that we as people like to shop and buy, we don't like to fill out forms. We don't want to talk to sales reps. We just want to find things out on our own and raise our hands when we have questions. And I think across the board, that's how a lot of people like to work with businesses, but then we go to our jobs in sales and marketing, and then we just do exactly the opposite. And a lot of people, the response that we've gotten so far is people are really rallying around this movement, and they know that what they're doing isn't the most customer friendly and most effective way, but there aren't a lot of tools, or it's just not obvious how to do it the other way. And so that's the problem that we're trying to solve here at Drift. Awesome.
I love it. So this segues nicely into, I'm going to jump a little, but one of your pieces of content was about gated content.
Yeah.
And the URL is free your marketing. I like that. So talk a little bit about what your perspective is on freeing your marketing, getting rid of gated content. Why do this, and what's the upside? What's the benefit?
Yeah, so we did it just because, so first of all, our product starts at free. Our business model is really similar to Slack, is a good example that a lot of people might be familiar with, where you can sign up. It's free forever if you want to use it at the free tier, but then there's different, things that you can upgrade for based on features and functionality and integrations and all the good stuff that you might get as you start to grow. And so we just said, what's more valuable for us? Is it getting somebody's email address or getting them to use Drift? And, we want to drive everybody into Drift to use our product. And then, also we just kind of realized that marketing just kind of felt like it's lost its way a little bit. And, I'm guilty of it too. I was doing all of these things and they were, working as far as driving traffic and capturing email addresses. But, just kind of felt gimmicky, like, hey, read my post about 10 ways to grow your blog traffic, and then download my free checklist about 10 ways to grow your blog traffic. And that stuff just, it worked to get email addresses, but we kind of just realized, like, hey, let's do things differently. That's not the business that we want to build. And because our product is free, our marketing philosophy is like, let's just spread drift as wide as possible and get our brand out there everywhere. And a couple of years ago, like, everybody would think that that's not a good idea, because you can track everything in marketing, and you can, build a funnel and gate and landing page and, optimize everything. But like, we're starting to see marketing go a little bit back to its roots, in that the brands that are winning are amazing to work with. They have great brands. People love them. Companies like Slack and MailChimp, for example. And so we want to build a business like that. And you would never see those guys doing something like that. And so that's why we're not going to do it either.
Do you feel like, in a weird way, that helps you stand out, because so many people are doing it like the wrong way, so to speak?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you said that. So, right after we wrote that post, all the marketers wanted to ask me, like, but what's the conversion rate? Like, show me the numbers that this worked. And it's actually funny, because that post was the number one traffic post we've had all time. That post generated the most email addresses out of any other thing that we've done. And so, like, going completely against the like gated content, grain, we ended up getting the most traffic and most email subscribers that we've gotten out of something. And to me, that just says, like, there's a real, rallying cry around this, and people are interested in this. And so I think, to your point, doing things the other way has started to, build a little community of people right around that movement.
Wow, that's great. So for any businesses or people listening that might want to try this out, what do you recommend they just go ahead and try it? Like, do you need to maybe prep a little bit? Like, how do you make that switch?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's hard to give like one size fits all advice. I'm fortunate enough to work for two amazing founders who are product people first and also get marketing. And they've actually built, I think this is together, they've built 3 or 4 marketing tech companies. And so they get how this whole thing works. But I've talked to some people and had a lot of conversations about this as a result. And a lot of people are like, yeah, but my boss measures me on like, the conversion rate on these landing pages and number of email subscribers. And so like, I understand that for everybody, it's not going to be the easiest thing to change over. But, I think like my advice for somebody that wants to get started with this is like, just make all of your content free. And then instead of gating it at the front where people have to put in their email address to get it, do that at the end, right? And if you do a good job, and this is what we're noticing with all of our content at Drift, if you create something that was amazing and people enjoyed it, they're going to subscribe to get your future stuff. And so you're going to accomplish the same thing. It's just at the end. And to me, that's the world that I want to compete in. I want to compete in as a marketer, where I want to compete by creating good stuff. Like, not who can, because anybody can create a landing page and try to like, out tweak the other person, or like, come up with the next gimmick to capture email addresses. But, if you're a business and you want to compete on like the quality of stuff you're creating, I think that's the best playing field that you can be on.
Absolutely. So this segues a little into a quote that I pulled. I think you said something like, "We believe in treating people like people, not leads." So can you provide maybe some examples or follow up on that philosophy a little bit?
Yeah, I think the reason that we said that is because, what happens is when you take that approach, Dan just becomes dan@gmail.com, who's now downloaded an ebook. And then we push him further down in the funnel, and, dan@gmail.com has viewed these 3 pages on our website. So let's trigger this message to him. And we've never once had an actual conversation with you. And the people like that's the way that people want to buy. I mean, yesterday, I was on a call with a company that we were working with, and they signed me up for this free account because I needed to check something out. And within 2 minutes, I got like this string of onboarding emails from a sales rep. And that's just like a great example of a conversation that has no context, because I'm not going to buy that product. It's for something else. And that's just a great example. Like, ooh, we got a new email address. Let's put this person down the funnel. And you just become a lead. And in that model, this is a grossly, oversimplified way of saying it, but like the traditional B2B marketing process is like, drive a bunch of people to your website. Once they get to your website, get them to convert on a form. Once they convert on a form, you nurture them, which means you either spam them until they unsubscribe or they buy from you. And like, we just think that it doesn't always have to be, that one way or another. There's got to be a better way. And so, all of our marketing, all of our sales, and if you go to our website right now, it's all focused on, there's real people there that are ready to have a conversation.
So is that the alternative, is like providing that open doorway, the open communication opportunity to just have a conversation with potential customers?
Yeah, because that's the way we buy things. Like if I was checking out a new app or something, a new tool for our marketing team to use here, I don't want to talk to a sales rep. I don't want to fill out a form. I want to like sign up for free, sign up for the free trial, play around, use it. And then if I have a question, I don't want to call somebody. I don't want to fill out a form and wait for somebody to reach out to me. I just want to be able to send that person a message, just like I would send a message to my wife or to my friend or to my boss. Like that's the way that we're all talking today. It's the reason why Slack is so popular. It's the reason why messaging has just exploded. But businesses haven't really tapped into messaging as a channel to talk to their customers yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally resonate with that philosophy as well. We've circled around a little and you've talked about content. You just very serendipitously published a post the other day. It was 6 things we learned about content marketing. I saw it on Growth Hackers. It's a great post. I want everyone to go read it. But can we talk through some of those things? And I actually wanted to ask you a little bit before we talk about the things you learned about marketing, content marketing. Take us back to the beginning of that process. Did you sit around with people at Drift and come up with a plan? Who was involved? Like, what was the beginning of this process like?
Yeah, there definitely wasn't a plan. And this is, the good part and bad part about an early stage company is like, you're just very much got to figure it out with no direction. I was hired as a first full-time marketer in the fall. And basically my direction was build us an audience, but you don't have any budget to do it. We don't want you to spend on anything. And that's pretty much it. And so the only way I knew how to do that was by creating content and starting to create things that people liked. Just kind of looking at the landscape, we had 2 well-known founders who a lot of people were interested in. So we already had some brand awareness. People didn't know what Drift did, but they knew that Drift existed. And so that was a good recipe for really focusing on content and PR as our kind of marketing strategy. And, content and PR are things that a lot of startups talk about. But this was actually the perfect recipe for us from a customer acquisition strategy standpoint. And so we just started creating content and trying to get our name out there and get people in. We had a couple of assumptions, like they had already been building our product. So we had a couple of assumptions on who our buyer would be and the audience that we were building things for. So I would just kind of create a content strategy around those personas basically and just started writing. And there was no strategy to it. It was just like, I had a good idea, a couple ideas this week. Let's turn that into good content and just, start to see what happens.
And there's a nuance there that I think takes the long approach, because what you said was they said the goal was build an audience. Yep. Oftentimes you hear businesses say that they want content to get them leads.
Yeah.
Which it can be good and bad. It can be a little frustrating at times because I think that forces you into the short-term view of content. Versus building an audience, naturally, there's more of a long-term view in that. So
yeah, way longer term. It's a great point. If they had said, all right, by month 1, you got to have X hundred number of leads, that wouldn't be that, we could get it done, but like that would change the way that I would think about marketing and force me into a lot of the bad things, like, probably immediately start spending on paid and seeing if we can acquire people that way and, gate everything and just like aligns you in the wrong way. Whereas I think it's because they're product guys and really want to be a product driven company and not a sales and marketing driven company. And so they were like, look, we're in this for the long haul. We're building a product. Like we're not going to go anywhere. But while we're building this product, it's now time to start building an audience and just build up this community of people who might care about Drift. So then when we're ready and we have a product to tell them about, we have this existing community to reach out to.
Was there any metric that was given to you as like to look at as a goal? Was it followers or like email signups or traffic or? No,
they didn't say like, hey, you're going to be measured on this goal, but it was really on me to just figure out, especially in a team filled with engineers and designers and product people, like part of your job as a marketer is merchandising, what you do. And so all of the stuff that I would share would just like, here's how much we're growing traffic. Here's like one of my favorite things to share with the team was the growth of direct traffic to our site because of all the PR stuff that we were doing. And that was a huge channel. And to show them all the growth in organic traffic to our site, because just being able to show people like, okay, yeah, this post, maybe it only got a couple email subscribers, but now month over month, look at how this is compounding. And it's one of the things that I mentioned in that post was one of the things that we created about product marketing back in October. I just looked at it this month while before hopping on this call. Actually, I was looking at some blog stuff. It's going to drive almost 1,000 people to our site, and we haven't done anything to it. And so that's like the compounding, effects of content. And that stuff's hard to show on day one, but it's also why like you need to own that conversation as a marketer on your team and be like, look, we're not doing this. It's not like I write a blog post and we get customers, right? Here's the long-term process. And I just think being transparent and showing those things to your team as you're creating them really goes a long way.
Absolutely agree. One thing I love to piggyback onto the direct traffic thing, I love showing brands their branded search volume, especially compared to competitors. So when people come to me and they're like, "Oh, why aren't we ranking as well or doing as well and getting traffic?" I'll just show them, "Look, your competitor has 5,000 searches a month for their brand name. You have 50." And so I would imagine, based upon your success so far at Drift, if you were to figure out what your branded term is and look at brand search volume, you would see that growing as well.
Yeah, it's grown. It's funny. So we, when they started the company, Drift there was a challenge because drift is a popular term, right?
Yeah.
Drift racing, drift wood, whatever, any combination of drift. And so almost for 5-6 months of being here, Drift wasn't even on page one. And so we were doing all of this without any help from Google, and took a bunch of work, and there was there wasn't a short-term fix for that. It wasn't just like we create a couple blog posts and, tell Google who we are and all of a sudden we're on page one. Now we are, luckily, we're the number one, organic search result for Drift. So, but what we were able to do is nobody else was bidding on Drift as a keyword. And so we didn't want to spend on paid, but we spent like, a couple bucks a month, just making sure that if somebody was doing a branded search for Drift, that we would show up in the search results. And I don't think we've spent more than, $50 to $100 doing that. And to me, that was just like a no-brainer, way to spend money and like artificially get onto page one.
Yeah, because those impressions do matter, even if people don't click.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Drift is like the search term Drift gets like hundreds of thousands of impressions a month, and so we'll take those.
Super smart. So I want to go back and ask about the actual process of creating content. So were you literally the only person creating the content?
We had a couple other people on the team at the time, and so everybody. Content is like, because we wanted to take this approach, and we're just big believers in content as a marketing strategy. Basically, like if you work at Drift on the marketing team, you have to be able to write, and it doesn't mean you're a writer, but it means you need to be able to write, and there's a big difference. And so yeah, but yeah, I mean, if you look at the majority of the 200-ish posts, I think they've come mostly from one or two people.
Awesome. So those 200 posts were published in what period of time?
We really started, we might have had 4 or 5 posts before I got here in October, but I would say from October to June, 190 of those or 200 have been published since then.
Yeah. So I'm terrible at math on the spot, but how many posts a week was that about?
I don't know how many it was a week, but there were some. I'll just give you an example. So this is part of what I talked about in this post too, which is like we just started writing just because. And so there were some weeks where we published 3 posts a week. Some weeks we published 5 posts a week. Now that we have a little bit of audience and we actually understand this quality over quantity thing, we publish about 1 to 2 per week. And if we ever do publish more, it might be because we're just using our blog as a platform, but we'll only be promoting like 1 to 2 pieces at a time, because if you promote too many things, nobody's going to pay attention to them.
Right.
And so like, our product, you might look at our blog and be like, yeah, but Dave, you guys published 5 posts this week. Well, one of them was from our product manager about like, you know, our product update this month. The other one was like a case study about a customer. And then there's really only like one or two, what I would say like top of the funnel posts per week that we're promoting.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit more about where the ideas came from for the content. So you said some of this was just, you think of an idea and then just like, was any of it more calculated than that? Was it just kind of like an idea would hit you and then you would write about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say like I'm just sitting here just like firing off amazing ideas, but a lot of this stuff has just it's just been obvious to us based on the company that we're building and the things that we're learning. So a lot of it's that, honestly, just because we're early, like we want to take this approach of just like writing things differently. And so I kind of think of our content strategy. It has two tracks. So one of the tracks is more like thought leadership focused stuff. So, you know, a good example of that is a post we wrote last month about how Slack was able to grow, you know, to millions of users without a sales team, right? That's a great story that also fits with our mission, like, you know, kind of closely relates to what we're doing. And then the other track is like tactical content. And that's a lot of the stuff that I've been writing, which is I've always been a big fan of businesses who share what they're doing as they're doing it. I think that makes you credible, whether you're right or wrong. People look at you as like, okay, these guys are open and honest and they're sharing what they're doing. And so that's the reason why you've been seeing a lot of those posts from us, like things we've learned from writing emails and sending, you know, and writing blog posts and stuff.
I can think of 37 Signals and Basecamp now as a great example of a company that I always looked at doing. Are there any inspirational examples for you of other companies that have done this well?
No, that's a really good one. I can't think of a company off the top of my head, but just like I just have, you know how sometimes you just come across like these people on Twitter and it's just like some random person who did some experiment and wrote about it. Like that's the stuff that I enjoy reading. A lot of brands just like publish fluff and you don't really get, like, nobody needs to know, you know, the 10 things you didn't know about Twitter anymore. Like I'm good with that. And so, you know, it's just like the random people that you end up following on Twitter who say, hey, we wanted to see what happens if we spent $1,000 on Facebook and only targeted people in Boston on iPhones. Here's what the results were. Like, that's the stuff that I like to read.
That's awesome. That's a great example. Somebody listening should take that and use it.
Yeah,
it's a good idea.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the promotion side. So I originally, this is a testament actually to what content can do for you, because I think I originally invited you on this show because I came across a piece of content on Medium about people doing PR. Why most startups suck at PR is what
that was the title. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think I'd followed you for a little while, but when I saw this piece of content, I said, oh man, I've got to get David on the show because, but that's the power of what content can do. Cause now you're on the show. Some people will hear about you and Drift and it just continues to spread. So one thing I want to talk about is the promotion aspect of content, and maybe you could touch upon PR a little bit, but what are some things that you did that you saw as successful for promoting content at Drift?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've tried all of it, and I would just say I'll talk about the things that I think have had the most impact, because I think, you know, there's a list of 100 things. Like, you can send an email, you can, you know, promote it on Facebook with Facebook ads, you can promote it on social media, you can do all that stuff. The two things that have had the biggest impact on our traffic is, I can't tell you how much time that I spent in the early days of working at Drift, like just cold emailing people. Like, that's how we got our first 1,000 visitors, 2,000 visitors, 3,000 visitors. And that's the thing that I don't think people understand. If you start a blog and you just start publishing and you're like, oh, I publish it on my Twitter account, which has no followers, like, you're not going to build an audience that way. But what will work is, here's a good example. So we wrote this post about product marketing. That was our original core audience. And product marketing was a topic that was really popular among product marketers, but not a lot of people were creating content around it. And so when you uncover something like that, that's the perfect opportunity to do cold outreach and tell people about the things you're writing about. If I was writing blog posts about marketing software, there's 1,000 vendors in marketing software. Like, why should I email Dan and why would you share it? Like, I get these emails all the time now, like, hey, Dave, saw you run the Drift blog. Mind sharing this? And I'm like, It depends on who it is. But like, I also don't think that's a strategy. Having us tweet something for you isn't going to drive a lot of traffic. Right. But when you find the right people, that's when it matters. And so one of the things that I did is we wrote this post about, we gave product marketing a definition. We created this slide share. It was really good content. And so I just spent like 2 hours on LinkedIn, and I looked at every VP of product marketing or product marketing director at companies that I'd heard of. That was my criteria. So I'm literally going in LinkedIn and typing VP product marketing Twitter, VP product marketing Spotify, right? And just seeing how many people I can find. And then I just made a list. Like I just put 20 names in a Google sheet, found their email addresses, and just cold emailed all those people. Like I think that's the underrated thing. And a lot of, this is where like people will ask, yeah, but like how much traffic did that actually drive, right? And I think there's a certain this is kind of like this part of it that's not quantifiable, but me having started conversations with those people who are influencers, or one of my favorite ways to talk about is what Seth Godin calls sneezers, right? Like when they sneeze, everybody else gets infected. Those are the people. And so it's about them sharing that. And I think that was the number one thing. That's one example in the early days that helped bring us a lot of traffic.
And so when you reached out to these people, what would you say in the email? Would it be, hey, can you read this? Hey, can you share this? Hey, I want, like, what kind of do you say to them?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say, I wouldn't even send them a link in the first email. I would just say, hey, Dan, I'm Dave. I run marketing at this company called Drift. We actually just pulled together this definition of product marketing. Since you're a product marketer, I thought you might dig it. Can I send you a link? That's it.
Yeah.
And then they would reply to you and say, yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. Send over the link. And like that little change to outreach is huge because it shows that I put in my time and like I'm treating you like a real person. Where if I just cold email someone and said, hey, Dan, wrote this post about product marketing. Saw you're a product marketer. Here's the link. Can you share it? I'd be like, hell no. Yeah,
totally. I love that idea. So in your post that you have communities as one example. Now, is this something that you saw that had outsized results as well?
Yeah. Well, so I started to post on communities mainly because I'd always read all these blog posts about, how I drove 10,000 people from Reddit or something. Like there's always those examples. And so I just started posting there, but for a while we weren't doing it right. I was just posting like the link and nothing would happen. So what I started to do is to just actually try to create a discussion around it, even if I was putting myself out there to get ripped by everybody else on the community. Like, hey, we threw away all of our lead forms. Here's the whole story, and I like actually write out the content in the forum instead of just blasting a link out there. And that really started to make a huge difference. The other thing is just from creating content, I've kind of built up a network of probably 10 to 20 people who are in similar roles at similar companies. And if we all write something, we kind of help each other out and share it if it's good. And so I think like whatever you're creating, if you can build your own little community of people that whenever you have a new piece of content, you almost put them in this playbook, like, okay, I created a new piece of content. I'm going to reach out to my 10 people that I know will always help me spread the word about something to like start to get the ball rolling a little bit.
Yeah. And so for these communities, for people that are wondering, we're talking about like inbound growth hackers and so forth. So when you're posting this content in there to create the discussion, are you just cutting and pasting, or are you actually writing something unique on top of the content itself?
No, I try to write something unique on top of the content itself. I almost treat it like if I was going to email, I treat it like I would send an email to our list. And I would say, what would I write in this email and what story would I tell? And that's the way that I write the post on growth hackers or inbound.org. Sometimes I'll give you a little secret. I'm kind of lazy and I use the same thing on both.
Yeah.
But when I can suck it up and put in a little extra effort, it really does work. And so it's not that much extra time, but you're just basically, writing your personal take. And I think people like that. I think people like when they see the author of something, because it's one thing when so a lot of these communities don't like self-promotion. So you can't just that's why it wouldn't work if I would just post a link. But I think when self-promotion is okay when I'm saying hey, I'm the person that wrote this post. Like you're putting yourself out there. So that way, you're like, you know what? If you hate it, go ahead, yell at me and tell me that, and troll me and tell me that I'm self-promoting. But when you actually step out of that shadow and you say, hey, I wrote this post, Here's why I wrote it. Here's what I learned. Here's why I wanted to post it on inbound.org, because there's 150,000 marketers here. This is why we're doing it. I would love to hear your take. Like, I think that's a better approach.
Yeah, I really like that approach. Now I'm thinking about trying that in a few examples. So number 5 you have in this, I don't know if you've broken this out into a separate piece of content. It might garner some of this discussion you're talking about, but you're saying that looking at Google Analytics can be interesting, but it won't help you get more traffic. And I could see that being controversial, especially for people that are into data, they're into analytics, they're into picking apart. Like, what is your standpoint on that? Like, why will that not help you? I mean, because even playing devil's advocate, I'll go and look at past success and then try to replicate that. And you can get that from analytics. So what's the point you're trying to get across there?
So first, I'll give you a funny story. When I posted this on inbound.org, somebody called me out because they said, if you don't care about Google Analytics, why'd you use UTM tracking in the link that you posted here?
Yeah.
And so the reason I wrote that was, it's not to say that I don't. So if you actually go and read the whole section, which I notice a lot of the internet trolls don't do. They just call you out on the headline, but if they actually read the body of it, they don't like that. And so my point of it was, I just think like we live in this world of everyone wants to optimize everything and spend so much time tweaking. And I'm guilty of it too. Like, Google Analytics is fun to look at. It's fun to see the things you create and like how it's having an impact. My point of writing that wasn't to say that I don't look at Google Analytics. I do every morning. That's what I'm looking at. And it's important to look at traffic and where it's coming from so you can know what's successful and what you should spend more time on. My problem with it is that a lot of people, just like spreadsheets, like to spend more time in spreadsheets and Google Analytics than actually creating the next best thing. Whereas if I just shut off Google Analytics, if I just didn't allow myself to look at it for the month, and I said, this month, I'm going to create 4 campaigns, and they're going to be once a week, and I'm going to spend a ton of time researching them and a ton of time writing and promoting them and doing and creating good stuff. Like, the impact from doing that is 10x any nugget that you can find in Google Analytics. And so my point was, in the early days of a startup and trying to get traction and starting to grow a blog, for example, it pays to like get out there and create more than it does to be like the data driven. I'm always in the weeds looking at numbers.
What's interesting that this always makes me think of is there was an experiment when they gave surgeons less data points, they were more successful in doing their surgery. It was like almost forced them to focus on what really mattered rather than. It's
a great story. And to be honest, like this, I wrote that because that's actually one of my worst habits. I do it all the time. I get like, I know like if I create that next big thing for us, it's going to have a huge impact, or hopefully it might. Sometimes you swing and miss, but if I take a big swing, something good usually happens. But I always get caught up in, I'm looking at this analytics platform, I'm looking at this funnel, I'm looking at this spreadsheet, and all of a sudden it's lunchtime and I haven't done anything. Whereas if I just like shut everything out and I started to create that next thing, because I have everybody has their like to-do list and their list of future ideas. If I just picked one and started creating it, good things would happen.
Absolutely. So tell us why startups suck at PR. I'm on your article on Medium now. We'll link to it in the show notes, but tell us why startups suck at this.
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 reasons. So the first reason, most startups suck at PR because they think that PR is an article in TechCrunch, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and that's what they're hunting. And there's a million different reasons why that's a difficult strategy. The second reason, this kind of goes hand in hand with the first, is that a lot of startups are telling the wrong story. And what I mean by that is, if you look on Product Hunt, just go on Product Hunt and you see new products, the first or second comment on every new product is, cool podcast, Dan, but how is this different than X other service that already exists?
I've seen that, yeah.
Right? And so it's already hard for you to compete. Even if you have the most amazing product and technical talent and team, if you're building something, there's a good chance that something like it already exists. And so it's hard for you to go to a journalist or a PR, any PR outlet and say, hey, we're revolutionizing the B2B marketing technology world. Like, if that was my pitch for Drift for a reporter, they'd be like, are you serious? There's 1,000 vendors out there. And so, like, but what a lot of people don't want to do is they don't want to tell the story about themselves. But that's the story that people who read articles, that's what they want to hear. They want to hear, David Cancel, this is his 5th startup. His last company was acquired by HubSpot. Why is he doing another company? Because he believes in these 3 things. Like, those are the stories that people want to hear that actually have nothing to do with about the day-to-day things that we're doing at Drift. And I think that, like, whether it's people don't know how to tell those stories or they're just going at it with the wrong angle. I think, a lot of people could get a lot more PR if they just change the angle to be more transparent and more about the people at the company than the actual like market that they're going after.
I love it. And so why are sites like TechCrunch or Wall Street Journal, why are these not necessarily good sites to be on for PR?
Yeah, so I'm going to change. I need a little caveat on this first because I had a good conversation with a founder friend of mine, and for his business, they build software that helps colleges connect with alumni. And so for their buyer, a piece in the Wall Street Journal is really important. So it depends on your industry, first of all. But for most, if you're in the industry that Drift is, SaaS companies, most people aren't getting their news from TechCrunch or the Wall Street Journal. Like, those are influential outlets and they can drive a lot of traffic and do good things for you. But like, most of the information that we're finding out today is from Twitter, is from Medium, is from podcasts that we listen to. And so like those sources, you don't need to go to them first for the only scoop. I mean, how many times, I can't even remember the first time I heard about a company was in like the Wall Street Journal. Now the company's like, oh my God, yeah, I've known about Zenefits for 2 years now. And now the Wall Street Journal piece comes out about them. So that's the first one. The second reason is it's really freaking hard to get in front of those people. They're being pitched all the time. You need an amazing angle. Most likely you need, real revenue numbers, real customer numbers, real case studies and references. And those are things that a lot of early stage companies don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. So for a startup trying to seek PR, what's a good alternative route to go? And you've sort of spelled it out, but maybe if we could break it down even a little bit more, like, should they should have a good story based around people, and then how do they get in front of the right sites to tell that story?
Yeah, I think the first one is like figuring out what's your story. What story do you want to tell? Like it could be, if Dan has hosted his own podcast and now because he knows the industry so well, he's going to start his own podcast technology company, and here's why. Like, that's a better story. The other part of that is like, think about where the people that you want to reach, what are they doing every day? Like, are they reading Medium? Are they listening to podcasts? Let's take podcasts, for example. If so, which podcasts are they listening to? That's one of the things that we did at Drift, right? We're targeting SaaS companies. So we made a list. What are the 50 podcasts that SaaS people that work at SaaS companies are listening to? And we just made a list and just treated it like a hit list and just went down one by one and reached out to every single one of them and tried to get interviews on them. And basically since October, we've gotten almost 80 press mentions or hits. And I consider press everything from podcasts that we do to guest posts that we write. And guest posts is actually another great strategy. A lot of people don't think of that as PR, but to me, like anything about your business that's on a property that you don't own yourself is PR.
Yeah, absolutely. So great segue, by the way, because I did want to talk about your podcast at Drift. And I think that I saw it started outside of Drift and then you kind of brought it into Drift. Is that right? Is that kind of how it evolved?
I have a podcast on my own that's called Tech in Boston, about startups in Boston that I started on the side a couple years ago. But then when I got to Drift, David Cancel is such a wise guy and he has a lot of good stories to tell. And so we wanted to do a podcast too. But it kind of just was a little thing we were kicking around. We'd do it every now and then to get some content out. But over the last couple months, it's really started to grow. And, it's been fun to have something that was kind of like a little side project that we were doing start to become a real driver of referrals for our business. Yeah,
because I saw you tweeted the other day that you're getting around 10,000 downloads per month now. And
Yeah, this month, yeah.
yeah, and that's great. Those are great numbers. So, by the way, is that being tracked through Libsyn? Is that, or how are you tracking those downloads?
SoundCloud. I've just for whatever reason, when I first started a podcast, I saw that the two options for hosting were SoundCloud and Libsyn, and SoundCloud was the one that a lot of people weren't using, so I just picked SoundCloud.
Oh wow, that. But it's funny because I've done the opposite. I use Libsyn and my website, and haven't put anything on SoundCloud yet, but maybe I should. So I want to ask.
Yeah, I don't think there's any built-in distribution in SoundCloud. I don't think we get any traffic from SoundCloud, but SoundCloud has a feature that just basically is exactly like Libsyn, where they're your host. And so whenever we have a new episode, I upload it to SoundCloud, and then from SoundCloud, since the RSS feed is already in iTunes, the whole thing starts to get populated everywhere.
Got it. So yeah, I did want to ask what you think is contributing to those 10,000 downloads per month. I'm sort of at the 2,000, maybe a little bit more downloads per month, and I've been doing this only for 3 months. Obviously, I'd like to grow that more and more. So what are the things besides, I mean, maybe Dave's already existing audience helped with that a little bit, but what are some of the drivers? What things do you think help drive those download numbers?
So I mean, his audience, like, you know, I'd be lying if I said that I didn't think that his audience was a huge contributor into those 10,000. I think, you know, for a guy doing what you're doing, 2,000 downloads a month is awesome. But really, we kept it separate and from Drift for a while, and then, you know, about 2 months ago, we made the decision like, hey, learning is a core value for our team and our culture here at Drift and the company that we want to build. And Seeking Wisdom, the podcast that we do, is all about learning. So it made sense to brand it as Drift. So we were able to get it in front of, like, you know, all of our website visitors and blog traffic and email subscribers. So that gave it a bump. But I actually just, like, lately we've been, I think it's good, to be honest. Like that, I think that's why people listening, it's like, you know, David is a no bullshit guy. I like kind of playing co-host to him and getting him fired up on topics like about how he never hires product managers or why you shouldn't get your MBA. You know, those are topics that I think a lot of people are interested in, but don't often talk about. So it's just a good fit.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, obviously the quality of the show itself has to play a huge role in that. I hear a lot of, I've heard a lot of podcasts that just the sound is terrible, or like like you go in iTunes reviews and people complain about how the host is annoying and they interrupt, you know, and so that stuff to me is like a no brainer. You just don't do that stuff.
It's just like anything else. Like once people found out you can do podcasts, everyone's doing them, but just because everyone's doing them doesn't mean they're all good, right? It's the same reason why everybody's blogging, but a lot of content sucks.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel that way about podcasting, where this is something I've wanted to do for many years, and I'm finally just doing it. I kind of wish I had started like 4 years ago when it was less crowded, but
yeah, no, I mean, I think you'll stand out now. You're not a host. Like the thing that a lot of hosts get wrong is if they're just not good hosts, and that's not something that you can't always learn that. A lot of people would just be like, so I'm on the line with David. David's from Drift. David, thanks for coming on the show. And then, like, next question. Like, it has to actually be a conversation. Right. That's why if you're going to go with that format, if you're going to go with this type of format, the interview style format, you have to be able to have a good conversation. If you're not, then put in more work and make it one of those like NPR style podcasts.
Yeah, and somebody that I heard, Product Hunt has a great podcast, by the way, and they interviewed Terry Gross from Fresh Air. And she's obviously one of the best interviewers on the planet. And I think one thing she said is just really the research that you put into it can make a huge difference. Like we try to ask questions that the guests have never been asked before, or at least bring guests on the show that my audience has not heard about before to bring unique value. So
yeah. So that's good advice. But I actually, a part of it, I'll go the opposite direction. I actually think that another good strategy, like if you're listening and thinking about podcasting, is when you're doing your research, like Dan, you did a great job of this, is finding things that I'm comfortable talking about. So asking me about things I've written, but then asking your take on those questions. So then I'm able to give an answer. Like, I think a lot of hosts will try to come up with too far out there of a question. And what ends up happening is the other person is like, I don't know. And then you're like, oh my God, that was my big question for this guest. And now they didn't have an answer. Now I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And so like it's great to have, you want to have good questions and you want to have new material, but the best thing is to keep a conversation going.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely an art. And I think, slight tangent, being a musician and an improvising musician has given me a lot of experience with that. Like, it's a give and take between having a script versus going off the cuff. And I think you have to have both. So jumping to something you said on Twitter a few days ago. I just wanted to ask what you meant. First you put in quotes, but how do you know these leads came from marketing? That's like you saying somebody's saying that, and then you have an arrow and you say, no good if you're asking that question at an early stage company as a marketer. And you're chuckling a little. So I want to know what triggered that tweet, and then what did you mean by that?
So I'm not sure I can tell you what triggered that tweet, but I think you can guess. But I can tell you what I meant by it. And what I meant is, so that was a question, obviously. Somebody asked that. And that's not the right question to ask at an early stage startup, because it shouldn't matter. Like, the entire team needs to be rowing in the right direction, and growing the company needs to be everybody's goal. And so if you're a marketer at an early stage company and you're worried about whether the leads that came in can be directly attributed to you or not, then you have bigger problems than attribution and like figuring out whether you have Google Analytics set up right. Like right now, for example, we're getting thousands of leads a month, right? I don't care that much about attribution. I want to know directionally the things that we're doing, are they working? But I don't need to be able to say to my boss or to anybody, hey, 750 of these leads came directly from marketing, because like we're like an infant. We need to grow and we need to do things every day. It's less important about attribution. Now, if I was at a company, a bigger stage company, like 1,500 employees, public company, and I was one of 75 people on the marketing team, yeah, sure. I would want to know. We should be able to know like attribution and the perfect funnel for all the stuff that we're doing. But in the early days of a startup, you got to just figure out stuff. And if you're hitting your numbers and if the team is growing, the attribution isn't as important.
Got it. So somebody actually asked you this question?
Yeah, not somebody on our team, but somebody that I was having a conversation with outside of work.
Got it. Okay. So, and what you're saying, I mean, doesn't some of this working have to do with the fact that you're at a company where everyone kind of gets that mentality? Because I've worked with other companies and they want everything attributed, right? They want me to show that I did X for them. And so some of this is a little bit of the benefit of working with a company like Drift.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and this is probably another part of that conversation. If that's a question that you have to have, maybe you're also at the wrong company too. Like maybe you're not working with the right founders or the right people. But I mean, let's say today we got a couple hundred new leads. Great. Right? Like I don't need to know. It's not important to me to be able to say, because we spent 4 hours writing a blog post yesterday, how many leads did we get from that?
Got it. So let's talk a little bit about side projects. You wrote a post on Medium. We'll link to all the stuff in the show notes, but why are side projects something important to you, and how have they helped you out personally?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics. Side projects are important. So to me, it was really important because I was earlier in my career and working at a bigger company. And when you're at that stage, or even a smaller company, you don't always have the keys to do everything. And so, I was working in product marketing, doing stuff, but I didn't have any keys to the website, didn't do any email marketing, didn't do any SEO, didn't do any content creation. And so starting a side project basically made me the boss of my own thing. And it forced me to really, specific to my project, forced me to really figure out what marketing was and how to build an audience. And so, you go from having an idea to, oh my God, I have to set up a website now. How do I get a domain? How do I get that set up? How do I get audio equipment for a podcast? Like, who's going to listen to it? When am I going to record? How am I going to reach out to people cold and try to get guests? And so like, these are all things that you're not always able to do in your job. And it's kind of like your little test bed. You get to test out all that stuff. And so that way, like when you go to a place like Drift, it's not the first time that you've sent a cold email to somebody, or it's not the first time that you've had to, go into a website and make a change, even though that's not really your thing. You know how to do it. And so I think it's just a great way to to work on skills and just do stuff on your own where you're the boss. You have to make all the decisions, all the success and failure is on you. And you have to figure out things that might be a little bit out of your like current, work skill set.
Love that. Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, this podcast has been a huge case study for that. So is Tech in Boston kind of one of your side projects?
Yeah, that is one of my side projects. That's the one that kind of got everything started.
And this is a podcast about tech companies in Boston.
Yeah, just like you're interviewing me right now, this is me going around to founders and CEOs of companies in Boston, just kind of like, talking about their companies and more so digging in on their founding stories and, kind of entrepreneur journeys.
Awesome. It's definitely, for two reasons, a topic very close to my heart. I love Boston. As you know, I'm in Worcester, right near there. So just a couple last questions. One is another tweet you tweeted the other day was you're reading more books this year in 2016. And you listed out about, I don't know, maybe 12 or so books that you've read so far this year, including 7 Habits, which is one of my favorites. Out of this list, and I know you don't have it in front of you necessarily, but is there a favorite book that you've read so far this year and why?
Yeah, there is. The last one I read was actually, it's called Shoe Dog, and it's by Phil Knight, who is the founder of Nike. And just came out. It's a great book. If you're interested in anything related to business, or you've, like Nike, or you don't even have to like Nike. Just if you're interested in startups or entrepreneurship, it's an amazing story. He writes it, from his perspective. It's a memoir, and he only covers like the first 20 years. So the book starts in the late 1960s when he was like 25 years old, and goes all the way up until the 1980s. And just him talking about getting the company off the ground, all the crazy things that they had to deal with factories overseas, almost going out of business 10 different times, like, losing millions of dollars, like having to sign a check for $9 million with no money in the bank. It's just an amazing story. It was really easy to read. I'm really picky with books. If I don't like it right away, I can't really read it. So that's probably my favorite book I've read in a while.
Wow, awesome. Shoe Dog is what it's called.
Shoe Dog, yeah.
What did you think of 7 Habits?
I liked it. It was good. It was one of those books that the stuff in the book is obvious, but it's great to reinforce that. Like, it's one of my favorite things about reading business books is that a lot of the advice is right in front of you already. You already know these things. You already know that you need to practice. You already know that you need to be proactive. Like, all that stuff is important. But when you hear someone who obviously put the time to write it in a book and express it in a way that like you can't really express it yourself, it's good. It's just reinforcing.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely agree. So last question, tell us where people can find you online, where the Drift blog is, all that stuff, so people can go and check you out.
Yeah, so the number one thing that you can do if you liked the show and you liked me is to go to drift.com and check out Drift. That is the most important thing, for sure. And if you want to tweet at me, I'm at Dave Gerhardt, GERHARDT, on Twitter.
Awesome. Dave, thanks so much for joining us on Experts on the Wire. This has been a really fun show for me, and it's great to finally kind of meet you, quote, face-to-face on Skype. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And David, hope you have a great day. And
yeah, thanks. We got to hey, if you're listening, go give Dan a review, would you? Give him a 5-star review for this podcast.
Hey, Dave, thanks. I appreciate that. I'm super shy about asking for reviews.
Well, I just asked for you, so there you go.
Thanks. I appreciate that, man. All right, everyone, have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Okay, cool.
I've got you just did the post about the blog traffic, which was awesome. That's great timing. Maybe chat about your podcast a little.
Sure.
Maybe gated content.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Yeah. So I've got a whole list here, really. I'll kind of take the lead and, sorry about the sirens.
Oh, it's all good. Trust me, I know how audio goes with these things.
Yeah, that's what I get for being in Worcester too.
You're in Worcester?
I'm in Worcester, yeah.
That's where I'm from.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Like actually in Worcester, or?
Yeah, like my parents live there. I was born and raised there, was there my whole life, yeah.
Oh, wow. Whereabouts in Worcester?
Right off of Shore Drive near the Greendale Y.
Oh, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, my office is on Grove Street by WPI.
Are you in like one of the old building where like Northworks is and well, I used to intern at an advertising agency over there too.
They're right upstairs.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm in the Northworks building.
That's awesome.
That's funny. So that's Paley Advertising, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, small world. But yeah, as you know, the fire station's right down the street, so that's why we get the sirens. But cool. Yeah, I'll just jump in. I'll take the lead. And I guess my only question is, how do I pronounce your last name?
Gerhardt.